Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this special live episode of the Strategic Veteran. I'm privileged to introduce a remarkable individual whose career is a testament to resilience, adaptability, and dedication. Timothy Parkhurst began his Marine Corps journey in 1986 as a reserve field radio operator. His commitment to service saw him return to active duty, where he transitioned to becoming an infantry assaultman and later a scout sniper, serving in key operations like Panama and Desert Storm. After a brief break in service in the mid-90s, Timothy returned to active duty, taking on a new role as a parachute rigger. His journey continued through OIF and OEF with experience across all four Marine divisions, the 3rd Recon Battalion, the 2nd Recon Battalion, and MARSOC. He retired in 2014 at the rank of Master Sergeant, leaving behind a legacy of excellence in leadership. Now he's based in North Carolina and has embraced a new chapter as a serial entrepreneur and a passionate veteran advocate. His mission is to leverage his vast experience to support and guide fellow veterans, helping them transition to fulfilling post-military careers. So join us as we delve into Timothy's incredible journey and explore how his experiences have shaped his current endeavors. Timothy, brother, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Dude, yeah, it was awesome to see that you saw my episode with John Daly, and you guys sure are friends and have worked together before in the past, and you reached out to me, and you've got a really awesome mission going on, man. So I'm excited to invite you on and talk about what you got going on with the Marine Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation and what you're trying to get accomplished out there, brother.
Yeah, I appreciate it. First of all, John Daly's a great guy. He and I actually never really worked together during our career. He was doing much cooler stuff than I was at that time. But I heard about him a lot because, he's kind of got a reputation. And once I started working with the Scout Sniper Association and the Marine Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation, I reached out to him, and one of the things that he's involved in, as you probably know, is he's writing a lot. And we were trying to put together some sort of a professional writing program for Scout Snipers, to write about, their time in service, do professional writing, whatever. We're still working on that, but that's how I got involved with him. And he's now one of our volunteers on the Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation. I guess this is a good time to go ahead and tell you about our mission there. We're a legal subsidiary of the Scout Sniper Association, which is the membership organization for guys who've served as Scout Snipers. And the SSA takes care of the Marines and their families. I served as a leader on the board of directors there for 6 years, 4.5 of which I was the president. And over the last couple, before I stepped down at the end of this past year, we were talking about the idea of creating a war memorial for Marine Scout Snipers. One of our directors, Alex Carlson, is a retired gunner and Scout Sniper. He shot me an email one day. He said, "Hey, there's no memorial for Scout Snipers anywhere." And honestly, at the time, I hadn't even considered that. It's not really something that was on my radar. The more I thought about it, the more I thought, this might be an opportunity. I'm just a year and a half or so from leaving the association, because we have term limits and all that. And, I'm looking for something else to do with my time when that happens. And this looks to be like a heavy lift, and a bunch of guys that are all volunteers and have day jobs and families at home and all that. How are we going to pile this on top of that workload running the association? And so that's how the Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation was founded. So the board of directors of SSA got together and incorporated the Heritage Foundation as a legal subsidiary, but it's an independently operating entity. We have our own board of directors. We have our own bank accounts, and we've got our own tax exemption from the IRS. So we're a 501c3 public charity. And the mission of the Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation is to remember the sacrifice and honor the legacy. And we do that in a few ways. First is to try to get this memorial built. And I'll talk more about that later. But in support of the memorial, we realize that there's a ton of research that has to be done. And so we're literally uncovering the lost history of Marine Scout snipers in the Marine Corps. And so that's part of it. And then doing a proper accounting of every Marine Scout sniper who's been killed in action. And that's important because, if you're going to build a memorial, you want to know whose name should be associated with the thing. And right now, nobody can tell you that. Nobody, not the Marine Corps History Division, not the National Museum of the Marine Corps, not Headquarters Marine Corps, no one. So
that's mind blowing to me.
It is, right?
They just didn't track it or what?
Well, we can talk more about that in a minute, but it comes down to not being a primary MOS, right? So, yeah, but we'll get back to that. But then, so that's another part of the mission, very important to us. We're kind of feel honor bound to put a name to everyone. And then the final piece of the mission is to uncover enough of the history that we can write a history and educate Americans and our fellow Marines on the contributions Scout snipers have made since 1917, 1918. And, so there's a lot of historical stuff besides just building the memorial that is going to be an enduring mission for us even after the memorial is unveiled.
It sounds kind of cool, man. Like I'm mind blown that one, you don't know how many are actually KIA from Scout snipers, and two, it's always fascinated me. The Marine Corps really seems to be just like kind of forgotten about, especially after talking to John and his whole deal with standing up Detachment 1 and then later becoming MARSOC and all the kind of the aura around. There was no JSOC at the time, right? So every special operations force from all the military branches were competing to do these missions and stuff like that. It always seemed to me like the Marines are just like forgotten about or just like not paid as much attention to, right? Like, yes, people, at least when I was in, it's like Marines have special operators. Like, what do they do? Like, we never see them. What's their mission? So, like, can you talk about some of the history of the Scout snipers that you know of thus far? Like, what have you uncovered thus far?
Yeah, it's really pretty amazing, for not having ever been a primary MOS. And in fact, there are some periods where there was no MOS, not a secondary or additional MOS or even a skill designator. World War I didn't have any of those kind of things. I don't think anybody really had MOS numbers or anything back then. During World War II, the Marine Corps sort of adopted the Army's scheme for MOS numbering. And there was an MOS for sniper, and we just borrowed the same number that the Army used, which was 761. And so you'll see in the muster rolls and other documents that a whole bunch of Marines were assigned this MOS of 761. And to be clear, Marine Scout snipers have never been really special operations. We may be special and it certainly is advanced training, and it's not basic infantry, but but we've always belonged to the infantry unit, right? We've always belonged either to an infantry battalion or an infantry regiment. With the exception of World War I, where they belonged to the infantry company. So Scout snipers never had a home of their own, like, say, for example, Force Recon, or Recon Marines in general. They've got a whole battalion of their own, and they've got a Force Recon company within that battalion right now. It used to be an independent company, but that's not been the case for us, where we've always been just a small platoon, inside a larger infantry formation, regular infantry. And the guys that fill that platoon and go on to, attend sniper school and do the job are guys who are drawn from the regular infantry and stay in that unit. So, for example, I was with 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines back in the day, and I came from weapons company. I was a Dragon anti-tank assault man, and I went to we had an indoc that our sniper platoon ran for the battalion in Okinawa one year, and I took it and passed. And when we got off that deployment, they brought me over to the platoon. And so, now I'm a Scout sniper in support of the very same battalion that I was a part of before. And so all the Marines in the line companies that I knew, those are the same guys that I'm still supporting as a Scout sniper. So there's a very unique relationship there that Marine Scout snipers have always had. That isn't necessarily the same case with for example, recon snipers or other services snipers. They don't necessarily, stay in the same unit like that. And so it develops a really interesting operating relationship because the guys, the men you're pulling Overwatch for. You're not just some attachment that flew in to to join up with them prior to a deployment, and then after the deployment you say goodbye and go back to your home unit. It's not like that. I mean, you are part of that unit, and so that's a unique thing. And so we're not special operations per se. But the skill set certainly is very comparable to some of the things that special operations or reconnaissance Marines do. And in fact, I'm getting ready to have a conversation over the weekend with Pep Tablata from Marine Reconnaissance Foundation and some of his guys. There's a tremendous number of Marine reconnaissance men who are scout snipers also. And for them, it's just another one of the skill sets, but it's one that everybody that's ever graduated the course is pretty supremely proud of, as is, Pep and a lot of these other guys and John Daly. It's part of what molded him, to be the guy that he is. And so it's, from the very beginning, they sort of set us apart a little bit. But we still always resided within the infantry formation. So we were special, but not that special.
Yeah, it's I guess the reason I associate it with special operations is because I had obviously John on the show, and then my second show was actually Aaron Brandfast, who is another MARSOC guy, and they both had the same path, right? They went scout snipers before they ended up in the special operations world. So I just in my mind, I don't know why I just associated that way, because your scout snipers operate the same way we do in the Army. You go try out to go to that platoon, which is attached to the headquarters company inside the infantry unit. You get selected to do that, and then you get the opportunity to go to sniper school, and then you are just a platoon of snipers, and we call them scout snipers also. Scout platoon usually is what we call them. And then they kind of get dispatched out throughout the formation, similar to, I guess, what you guys are talking about. They're part of the regular infantry unit. These guys personally. They're not just some, like you said, attachment that comes out there, to pull Overwatch for you. It's very personal. So it's cool to see the similarities there. And I guess it makes sense since you did borrow the MOS number. I learned that from you just now. I didn't know that the Army had a 761, and that was a sniper. I always just knew it was 11 Bravos who go to sniper school usually. Yeah.
And that was during the World War II period. I don't know, at what point they might have changed it, if they ever did. But yeah, during the World War II years, the Marine Corps, I don't think they had a numbering system for MOSs prior to the war. And so they just sort of adopted what the Army had to make it easy. Yeah.
Makes sense. So let's talk about, you said part of your mission is to catalog all of the lost souls from scout snipers. And so my first question is, man, I remember being deployed a bunch, and, the accountability on people was always there. It was like one of the biggest, drivers for us, right? Like even the notification process when we would lose somebody, like nobody's calling home until we get these people notified and accounted for and all of that. So how did they lose track of all? Is it because there was no MOSs and because they were just sending dudes to do this school, or did nobody care? Like, what are you discovering about this?
Well, so let me clarify what I mean by lost track. They know exactly who was killed in action in every conflict since World War One. There are online repositories of information where you can pull up the killed in action from every conflict. And so that's not hard to do. What is difficult is to distinguish any one Marine as a scout sniper or not. They just didn't keep those records, right? So, so those men are listed on, for example, if they were killed in Vietnam, they're on the wall, right? Mm-hmm. In DC. They're on the roster of every, if they were killed in World War II, they're on the roster somewhere for having been killed in action, right? But what they're not is they're not collated in a single list that represents them as being scout snipers, right? So, I asked this question of some guys in other special operations type units not long ago. So former Green Beret, I asked them, hey, you guys were given your Green Beret by President Kennedy. You don't go back too terribly far in the grand scheme of things, but that's some history, and would you say that there's any chance that you don't have a full accounting of everybody who was killed in action that was a Green Beret? And he kind of laughed, he's like, yeah, no, of course we know, we know every single one. And I asked a Navy SEAL the same thing, and his response was almost identical. It's like, yeah, of course we know, we going all the way back to the UDT days in World War II, we know every single one that was killed in action, and we know who they are. And so, that's something that we can't do. And Headquarters Marine Corps can't tell us. And it's an HR problem, really.
I was just sitting here thinking that, because I remember in the Army, if you go to Ranger School, you get an identifier on your ERB behind your MOS. So, I was a staff sergeant. I would have been 11 Bravo 30. And if I had a Ranger tab, it would have said Victor. Right. So that's how you automatically know that I was Ranger qualified, just by looking at my paperwork. So essentially, HR Marine Corps never did anything like that. Is that what you're saying?
Well, so Ranger School, that's a great example, and let me kind of build on that. So, Ranger School, from the time it started, has never ceased to exist, right?
Right.
Okay, so Scout Sniper School, on the other hand, it has ceased to exist after every single conflict. we had a Scout Sniper School at Quantico in 1918. And according to Marine Corps' records, their own historical record, they say that they trained 450 Marines as scout snipers in 1918 in Quantico, Virginia. The problem is that they didn't really catalog those names anywhere in particular that they could then set aside as a list, right? We know that because General Blackjack Pershing, who was the commander-in-chief of the American Expeditionary Force, he dictated that every infantry formation in the AEF should have 8 snipers per company. And those snipers belong to that company commander, and answer to him. And they're not to be separated in a separate unit of their own. He dictated that in January of 1918. And so, of course, the Marine Corps, falling under the AEF in France, had to abide by those guidelines. And so that's how we organized our guys. You can go back and find a muster roll from 78th Company, 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, and you can read through the muster roll and see who was a member of that company. What it doesn't tell you, though, is what
platoon they were in.
Well, it doesn't matter what platoon they were in, because they could have been in any platoon. It doesn't tell you that they were a scout sniper necessarily. It might, and that's what we're digging for, to try to find, maybe some notation that he was assigned as a sniper. But it certainly won't tell you that he went to the school, right? The only way we're going to know if somebody went to the school is if we find a muster roll of a forming unit at Quantico that was being put together and assembled prior to going over to France as an operational unit. They had all these forming companies. And so if we see them listed as student Scout Sniper School, which we've actually uncovered a bunch of those guys. So that's been very helpful looking through the muster rolls. But what we're hoping to find is somewhere maybe find a roster, like, a class graduating list from the OIC of Scout Sniper School to the commanding officer of the Overseas Depot or whatever, saying, hey, class whatever just graduated on this date, and here's your graduates, sort of like, when I graduated communications school back in 1986 at 29 Palms, California, I got a set of orders that was a list of every guy in my class that graduated the school, and my name was highlighted, and that was my endorsing orders or whatever, sending me back to my next unit. And so records like that existed at some point. We don't know if any of them survived the 105 years since. We have rosters like that from World War II, from the 2 formal schools that were at Camp Elliott, California, and New River, North Carolina. So
this is really a between World War I and World War II problem. Is that the biggest kind of pain point here?
Yeah. So So they got rid of us right after World War One, and then in 1942 there was a big push to try to have snipers again, and the Marine Corps actually formed a panel of 3 captains to decide what the program would look like, and those 3 captains wrote a nice long letter to the Commandant of the Marine Corps via their chain of command with all their recommendations, including a 34-day training schedule and organization at the regimental level and blah, 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 blah. And the Commandant approved almost all of it except for the 34-day training schedule. They cut it down considerably, but they took the recommendations on equipping them, on organizing them, all that kind of stuff. And so it became a formal program, and we had a school that started in January of 43 and lasted for a couple of years. And they put a lot of men through those schools. What's interesting about the World War II era, and this is kind of going down a little rabbit hole here, but most of the guys who served, or most of the guys who attended those schools and graduated from the course and got the MOS, so to speak, right? Most of them did not serve in a scout sniper platoon in combat. The only 2 platoons that we know of that were like actual scout sniper platoons at an infantry regiment that saw combat in the Pacific were 2nd Marines on Tarawa in 1943 and 6th Marines on Saipan in 1944. And what we are seeing is that there were other regiments that had scout sniper platoons. For example, 25th Marines and 24th Marines, we know they had a platoon. In fact, one of the first classes that graduated from the school at New River was all 25th Marines. Every single guy from the gunny on down to the lowest private was from that one unit. And so that was an entire platoon being trained en masse. But they never fielded that platoon in combat. And what we saw is apparently somebody made the decision, I guess the landing force commander, the general or the admiral for each of these major campaigns had made the decision that only the lead assault element would have the scout sniper platoon. Every other regiment that was part of the invasion for each particular battle would absorb those guys into their line units. And so, for example, 24th Marines, here, another interesting piece of history, Lee Marvin, the actor.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Tough guy. Everybody knows Lee Marvin, right? Dirty Dozen, all that. I'd heard rumors for years that he was a scout sniper. And I was like, nah, prove it. Right. Nobody could prove it. Well, we all knew he was in World War II because he's buried at Arlington. He's got a headstone that says he earned a Purple Heart in Saipan. Right. So, okay. That's legit. But was he a scout sniper? Well, I don't know. Well, all these years later, we just ran into a guy who runs a YouTube channel called Vestiges of History. His name's Dylan, really cool dude, but he puts some really interesting history out there. And one of our directors came across his show and he did an episode about Lee Marvin. And in the show, he puts up a picture of Lee Marvin's enlisted man's qualification card that's part of his record. It's in the National Archives. And on this qualification card, there's sort of a section of it where there's different entries that sort of form like a chronological record. Like, from this date to this date, he's in boot camp at Parris Island. From this date to this date, he's in quartermaster training at Camp Lejeune, and on and on and on, until he's discharged. And 2 of those entries say that he was a scout sniper, MOS 761. And apparently he actually attended the course at Green's Farm or Camp Elliott, California. And 24th Marines, headquarters 24th Marines had a platoon of scout snipers. Now, I know that because there's a book called 40 Thieves on Saipan that was written about the scout sniper platoon for 6 Marines on Saipan. The guy who wrote it is the son of the platoon commander. And that platoon was the only scout sniper platoon to land on Saipan. But 24th Marines also landed on Saipan, and they had a scout sniper platoon right up until Saipan. What happened to it? Well, you'll see in Lee Marvin's record where he was reverted back to regular infantry just before the battle. So they absorbed all the scout snipers back into the line units before 24th Marines went off to go fight on Saipan.
That's
And
strange.
yeah. So I guess it was a thing where they thought that, these guys are only going to be useful as part of the assault element, the lead assault element, and all the other units would just absorb them back into their, line companies and stuff. And so that's what we were seeing in World War II. So really, there were only 2 platoons that were fielded in combat in World War II. So and none of those guys were school trained. None of them. It's the only exception to that is the first one on Tarawa with 2nd Marines. Their platoon commander was William Dean Hawkins, graduated from the course at Camp Elliott, and then he trained his men on New Zealand after the Battle of Guadalcanal. He got himself a battlefield commission at Guadalcanal, and was once they finished that, went to New Zealand. He was given the task of forming this platoon, training them, and getting them ready to go to Tarawa, which he did. And that one platoon earned a Medal of Honor, a Navy Cross, and no fewer than 15 Silver Stars.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Oh man, I did a lot of reading in high school. I did my high school history paper on the Battle of Stalingrad, but I was really heavily researching the Pacific too. One of my favorite books ever is The Battling Bastards of Bataan. When you learn about all the stuff that was going on in the Pacific, man, a lot of that stuff is never talked about as much as it should be, and how bad it actually was. So, I think your job is really cool, man. Like if you like history, like this is right up your alley, right? Like,
yeah.
Particularly because you were a scout sniper, right? So now you're researching the history of something that you're a part of, which is really cool. And I think it's strange that it's kind of lost history, but it's also really cool that you get to be a part of finding that history.
Yeah.
So how many names do you estimate you're missing in order to start working on this memorial to make sure that the names are on there? And a follow-up to that is, what are the processes that you're using to go and discover all of this? I know you talked about muster reports and all of that, but I really want to kind of drive home the kind of the research and like how you approach this problem.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And to answer the first part of it, you asked how many names we think there are. That's a real swag. How many we have right now is about 147. That's how many KIA that we have. As far as how many Marines who were scout snipers, we are looking at 2,658 at the moment. And we're adding new names every single day. And it's a laborious process. We're finding names from every era, not just World War I, World War II, but also Vietnam. One of the tricky things about Vietnam has been that, a unit went over to Vietnam and that unit stayed in Vietnam for the duration, but the individuals in that unit were rotating on their own by themselves. They flew over there by themselves. They checked into a unit where they didn't know anybody. Half the guys are out in the field when they showed up, and they may go for most of their tour and never meet some of the guys in the unit because they're all, if I check into 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines or whatever, Kilo Company's out in the field, India Company's over here doing that. And, it was a weird time, the way that men were deployed back and forth to Vietnam and coming home.
Yeah, it sounds so weird just having experienced multiple deployments and the accountability piece that went into it. Everybody was accounted for. Like even when you were by yourself for like R&R breaks, there was still a huge accountability piece. You know what I mean? Like, how are we sending dudes by themselves?
Yeah. Well, I think there was pretty decent accountability as far as not losing anybody, but it didn't lend itself to having any cohesive knowledge of or understanding, within the group. If you took everybody that was in Kilo Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines at a particular period for like a 13-month period, they'll all have very different experiences, and they would have all had very different memories of their time in Vietnam, just because You know, the day they arrived, arrived by themselves. The day they left by themselves, or maybe with a small group of guys, but not with the whole unit, right?
Right.
And you know, so it was really kind of weird, and we found out that scout snipers in Vietnam were at both the regimental and the battalion level. So in some regiments, they had a scout sniper platoon, like 7th Marines. They had a scout sniper platoon at 7th Marine Regiment, and that's where Carlos Hathcock did his work when he was over there doing his thing. But at the same time, 1st Battalion, 7th Marines had a scout sniper platoon of its own with their own chief scout and everything. And that kind of blew me away. I didn't want to believe it at first, because I was talking to one of the members of the Scout Sniper Association who did 2 deployments as a sniper. He had gone over previously in 65, 66 timeframe, something like that, as a young lance corporal, where he didn't know anything, and somebody handed him a rifle and he went off and, you know, to be a scout sniper. And then he finished his tour, went back to the States, picked up sergeant, had a little more experience, and he came back to Vietnam in 67 timeframe when Carlos Hathcock was there. And but he was with 1-7, and they said, "Hey, you got some experience. You know, we're going to make you the chief scout for 1-7." And he's like, "Okay." And I'm talking to him about this, and he's telling me that, yeah, you know, no, we were assigned to 1-7. I was like, "Okay, you sure you weren't just put in direct support of them from the regiment?" He's like, "No, we were with 1-7." I was like, "Okay." And, you know, come to find out, having more conversations with more Vietnam era guys, there are actually quite a few of them that said the same thing. And we had no idea. And so that opens up, you know, a whole nother bag of worms, so to speak, to try to figure out, because now you're not just looking at the infantry regiments. Now you're looking at every single battalion, trying to figure out who was in it, right? Did they have scout snipers during this time? And you know, they may have had scout snipers at one time, but maybe they didn't have any at some other time, right? Because Vietnam was a long conflict, just like Afghanistan. And you know, they may not have had scout snipers early on, but maybe they did later, or maybe they did up front, but then they didn't later on, you know, and things change, and it's just crazy. So really what we're finding is, if we want to get the name of every single guy that was a sniper in Vietnam, we need to talk to every single living Marine scout sniper that served in Vietnam, so that we can have them tell us who was in your platoon when you were there. Because we'll get every single one we talk to, we get names that we have no idea about.
This is insane to me, man.
Yeah.
Just the record keeping, I guess, it's not accountability, but it's just the record keeping is just, I think because of my experience in the Army and knowing how much they stressed updating your ERB, right, that tracks every place you've ever been, every unit, kind of like what you were talking about with you know, his service record, right? And you could see it was a basic training. You know, our ERBs in the Army were the same way, and that was one of the things that was always stressed, because they wanted to track dwell time and make sure that, you know, you had a proper amount of dwell time. However, they didn't really care, you know, before they would deploy you more, as they started seeing the toll it was taking on us. But now you're pointing out, like, Vietnam, World War II, World War I, like, there's no record keeping, it seems like. So, and you mentioned, like, how how the Marine Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation, you know, came about, was like, you've got some heavy lifting to do. And I'd say this is a really heavy lift, man. This is a lot, because, you know, first of all, the Vietnam era guys they're getting really, really old. You know, it's you know, they're at the end of their lives, right? So you're running out of time to get in touch with these guys, if they're still senile, you know, are sane enough, you know, and not senile to be able to tell you their accounts, right? So are you really just, you know, doing the damn thing like we do in business, and just reaching out to as many Vietnam veterans as you can, and cold email and cold DMing them, cold calling?
Yeah, I mean, there's a real effort underway now. I've got myself and several of our directors are pushing hard to try to get in touch with a lot of these guys. We're trying to, you know, we have limited resources. We've got an 11-man board of directors, and, you know, all of us are volunteers. You know, we all have day jobs, whatever. But we want to be organized. We don't want to just call some guy up who's, in his late 70s and just say, "Hey, I'm Tim, can I come talk to you and put you on camera?" No, that's not going to work. First thing, they're probably just going to be like, who is this idiot? And no, you're not coming to talk to me. And you're not going to put a camera in my face. So what we're trying to do is kind of organically reach out to guys and get a warm introduction from someone else that we spoke to who knows them, right? So we have some Vietnam era guys that are part of the organization. We've been trying to get introductions to some of the guys that they knew and still know, and try to do it that way. And at the same time, we're also trying to educate ourselves on, the best way to do like an oral history, because we're not historians. We're just a bunch of grunts, and, we may enjoy history, but that doesn't make us experts at collecting it, so we're trying to get some assistance from the Marine Corps History Division. They have an oral history program, and we're trying to tap into that and get, maybe kind of formally partner with them is what I'd like to see happen. If we can ever get them to respond. They're a little undermanned these days, but yeah, one of the things that I spoke about with several of my directors here recently is that, we can't just go, even if we're given an introduction, somebody who knows them very well says, "Hey, you need to talk to Bob." And okay, so we call Bob. "Hey, Jim introduced me, he said you'd be happy to talk to me, whatever." You don't want the first thing to be, "Hey, we're going to take your whole history of everything that happened when you were in Vietnam." Right. That's just not.
You got to build a little rapport here.
Right.
Like let them know that you're a member of the same community, what you're trying to do, get them interested, make them a friend before you go and just outright like, "Hey, we want to tell your whole entire story on camera. Hope you don't mind."
Yeah. Well, in fact, we've decided that we don't even want to mention getting your story at first. What we want to talk about is what you and I are discussing now is getting the names. And I think every scout sniper from every era could get behind the idea of, hey, first of all, we're building a memorial to honor our war dead, and we want you to be a part of it. How can you be a part of it? We are having a hard time naming everyone that was a scout sniper, and we just want you to try to remember who you served with. That's it. And that's something that almost everybody, can kind of get behind and go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. That's an easy ask." It may not be easy to remember the names, but it's an easy ask, right? People aren't going to slam the door in your face for that. And so that's kind of how we're approaching this with individuals. Of course, there are still some records out there, and it's a process to dig that stuff up. We talk about the accountability and the records piece. I don't want to make it sound like, the Marine Corps just didn't keep any records, because they did. And for the most part, if you were to look up, let's say Bob Jones was a scout sniper with 7th Marines in Vietnam. If I go pull Bob Jones's service record book from the National Archives, it'll probably say something about it in there. There's a record of it. The problem is I don't know who Bob Jones is yet, so I can't go pull his record because I don't know Bob.
Right.
That's the problem. So there's nothing to point me to this particular individual by that name to go pull his record. Until somebody tells me that, "Oh yeah, there was this guy Bob. He was in our platoon." Oh, okay. Well, there's another name.
I wonder if there'd be a way to use technology of today. Are all those digital records from the National Archives now?
They're absolutely not. And that is the problem.
Sucks so bad. Because I was just sitting here thinking, like, if they're digital, you could send an AI bot after them to scrape all the records for any mention of scout sniper, and your problem solved, basically, right? Yeah. I mean, you're probably going to have some that fall through the cracks or whatever, but because they're not digital, man, oh man, it just gets a heavier lift now. So when you're talking to these guys, are they excited about what you're doing? Are they willing to help, or have you had any pushback?
Yeah. No, I haven't had any pushback. I actually did get some pushback from one guy early on in the process, and this was a gentleman I was introduced to. I won't say his name, but I was introduced to by another guy who knew him in country served with him and said, yeah, he'll talk to you, and I called him and used the reference, and he didn't want to talk. And I was like, okay, so I kind of got that door closed on me, but that's all right. We'll work on it. But yeah, it is a big lift, and it's not just the Vietnam guys. Korea, everybody forgets Korea, the forgotten war, right?
Yeah.
There's still guys living from Korea, not many, but they're still out there, and those guys are in their 90s.
Yeah.
And that's my real. I mean, if you were, you talk about danger close and observing the battlefield. You always observe what's danger close first before you start scanning out further and that sort of thing. And that's my danger close is the Korea guys, because they're literally almost gone, and very few, if any. There's one that I know of who was a scout sniper, and he went on to have a career in the Marine Corps, became a battalion commander, earned a Silver Star as a battalion commander in Vietnam. And he's written a book, and he talks about his experiences a lot, but his experience in Korea as a scout sniper, he doesn't talk about that ever to anybody. And it's doesn't even mention it in his book. But I've seen a copy of the certificate that he got from 5th Marine Regiment, being trained in the field as a sniper in Korea. And so I know he did it, but he doesn't like to talk about it. And when you're 90 something years old and you've got your story, right? You've got what you're willing to tell people, and you've got what you're not willing to tell people. And that's what he's stuck with all these years. And not having met him in person and only speaking to him on the phone, I'm not going to try to strong arm some 96-year-old man to tell me a story that he doesn't want to tell me, no matter how important it may be. I just,
it's his story. Yeah, that's his great, story to do what he wants with.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. That's, I'll keep it to myself that's not exactly what I was looking for, but yeah, and that's how some of these older guys are. It's very, very difficult. I think it's very difficult for them to bring up some of these stories. Yeah,
man,
it was hard. If you were a sniper in Korea, if you fought in the Chosin Reservoir, stuff like that.
That's immediately what comes to my mind when you say the Korean War, the Chosin Reservoir, and we
were
literally freezing to death. We had no equipment, the improper equipment, and I think part of him not wanting to share his story is I wouldn't want to remember that crap either, right?
Just can you imagine dredging up the memories of all that pain and suffering? And who wants to do that? But but anyway, yeah, so these are the struggles that we're coming up against, but we've got a very dedicated board of directors. We have a really good group of volunteers. And kind of the way the organization came about, we actually started talking about this about 2 years ago. And after, early in 2023, we actually had an election in the Scout Sniper Association to elect from our membership a bunch of volunteers who would form a steering committee for the Scout Sniper War Memorial. And that was our first bunch of guys that actually could get to work and start doing some of this stuff. And at the end of the year, we formed the Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation, and we moved that committee of volunteers from being under the Scout Sniper Association's oversight to being under the Marine Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation's oversight. And now we have our own separate board of directors, and some of our directors came from that committee, and most of the remaining committee members are still on board and still participating actively. So yeah, it's been great, and there's a whole bunch of guys from the community from different eras, different units that are all participating in this thing. It's not just me and some handpicked group of guys. This is
right.
This is guys that the association, the only membership organization for Scout Snipers on the planet, elected these guys, and put them in this little group that we're working with to try to uncover the lost history and get the memorial built.
Let's
And
talk about the memorial. Where's the memorial going to be? What is it going to be? Have you guys thought that far ahead? Do you have
oh
plans
yeah,
already? Yeah. So let's talk about it. You should use the last little bit of time we have here, and
yeah.
let's paint a pretty picture of what this is going to represent, and some of the what the memorial will look like, how you
Yeah,
guys have it all laid out.
yeah. So it's we think it's going to be awesome. Of course, we're the ones working on it, but it's going to be placed at Quantico, Virginia, outside the National Museum of the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps Heritage Foundation runs what they call the Semper Fidelis Memorial Park. And if you've ever visited the museum, it's that area that's off in the trees off to the left of the museum as you walk up to it. And there's a pathway that kind of winds through the woods. And it's a real pretty, sort of serene, peaceful setting. And there's all these memorials placed along the walkway. As you wander through the woods, you come around a corner and there's another memorial. And it's a very nice, very dignified setting. It's open to the public. It's free, and it's right there outside the main gate of Quantico. It's a Smithsonian level type of a place, and just like the Smithsonian, it's open every day of the year except Christmas, and it's free to the public. So you couldn't ask for a better location. Our history started at Quantico, so we feel like that's the the ideal place to put it. We've chosen a site, a specific site. The Marine Corps Heritage Foundation has walked the ground with us and showed us the available sites. There's a whole new section of that trail that opened up in May that made 3 or 4 additional, large Rally Point Memorial sites available. And so we got to walk around there a couple months ago and choose the one we wanted. And so that selection's been made. We haven't purchased it yet because we have to go through a vetting process with our design for the memorial. And our architect is actually working on that right now. We have a concept that's out there. If you visited our website, you've probably seen it. It's going to be a bronze sculpture, heroic scale, 2-man sniper team. And the 2 figures in the sculpture are going to bookend our history. You've got the beginning of our history with a World War I. The observer is standing there, kind of crouched a little bit with a hand on the shoulder of the shooter, and he's pointing. And off in the distance, you could say he's pointing at a target, or you could say he's pointing towards the future. However you want to view it. And the shooter is an Afghanistan era Marine, and that's the last part of our history. In fact, the last combat deployment of a scout sniper platoon from an infantry battalion was Abbey Gate. And, we all know what happened there. And so the symbolism that we're trying to convey with the positioning of the sniper and the observer we hope that every Marine will automatically think the same thing. And that is, we're big on our birthday, right? Marine Corps birthday, yeah. Big party, we do a cake and everything. And, part of this cake cutting ceremony, that's the centerpiece of our birthday celebration. There's this narrated, kind of message that gets read while the cake cutting ceremony happens. And every Marine that's been to a birthday ball has heard this. And, when they roll the cake out, it's all ceremonious and everything. And they're playing like the slow version of the Marines hymn. And they bring forward the oldest Marine present and the youngest Marine present and the guest of honor. The guest of honor will cut a piece of cake and put it on a plate and hand it to the oldest Marine. That might be some old retired guy, and he'll take a bite, and then he'll hand it to the youngest Marine, who's some boot right out of boot camp, and he'll take a bite. And while they're doing this, the narrator is reading the message that says that this symbolizes the passing of knowledge and experience from one generation to the next. And every Marine is familiar with that pretty much. And I think we've done a pretty decent job with the design, because pretty much every Marine has said, man, that's just like the way he's positioned, he's passing on knowledge and experience to it's like, yeah, that's it. And so I think, we're going to change up a few things, talking to the artist who's going to sculpt it, Sabin Howard. So Sabin is world renowned. He just completed his work on the National World War I Memorial that's going to be unveiled in September, and in Pershing Square, right by the White House. And he spent 10 years of his life working on that project. It's a huge sculpture, but he wants to do ours, and we're happy to have him on board. And he's provided some input, and so we're thinking of changing up the position of the shooter, so he's not actually behind the gun, actually, looking through the scope at a target. We're going to change that up a little bit so that he's not in his final firing position, and maybe have him, doing a map check, taking a knee, checking his map and compass, and maybe we'll make the World War I guy, his compass, will be visible hanging around his neck, kind of like they just did their, they just had a pause and took a knee and figured out where they are, where they're going, and the observer's pointing. That's where you're going. That's your final firing position, and the sniper's like, I get it, and so we're trying to convey that, that there is a future for our program. That's one of the things we're trying to convey in this sculpture, is that this isn't the end. It's the end for now, just like it was the end for now in 1919, and it was the end for now in 1944, and it was the end for now after Vietnam. 2023 is the end, but just for now,
Right.
And we know they're going to bring us back at some point. They always do. And
is there anything in the landscape that he could be pointing to symbolize anything else? Have you thought about that with the positioning of the memorial? There's
not really. It's, the landscape is what it is. It's a memorial park. Where we are, it's kind of down at the very far end of it. So we're kind of at the end of the road. And it's also it's not like on a hill overlooking everything in that regard, but it is the highest point of elevation in the park.
I knew it was going to be.
Yeah. But it's not like you're on a ridge line, kind of, standing on the mountaintop looking down. It's
right.
It's not really like that. It's much more gentle, kind of a rise. But you do get a good view of the approaches coming up, the way the pathways wind through the woods. When the leaves are off the trees, you can see all the approaches coming up, just like you would want to position yourself as a sniper so you can see the avenues of approach.
That's really cool.
And it's sort of tucked into a curve in the walkway, to where if you're looking at our memorial, that's all you're going to see. You're not going to see anybody else's memorial right next to it or anything like that. And as you approach it from the left or the right, it's the same thing. You're only seeing our memorial, the way they've got the site situated. So we think that's probably the best place for it. But yeah, we have a great team put together to build it. We have a award-winning architect who's doing the site plan now, and once he gets that done here in the next couple months, he'll submit it to the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation. And then all the experts at the History Division and the Marine Corps Museum and everywhere else will get to pick it apart and make sure that it's all historically accurate and blah, blah, blah. And when they approve it, that's when we'll be able to purchase the piece of ground.
Nice. So when do you expect this to be complete?
We're hoping that the whole thing will be done, hopefully in 24 months. That's my goal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you got some time. Got
a little bit of time. So really the piece that we are most lacking in is fundraising, and that gets to, why I'm here talking to you today, because nobody knows who we are. We're a very, very small group of people to begin with. And, guys in the military community, a lot of guys have heard of Scout Snipers and maybe have heard of the Scout Sniper Association because they've been around for 25 years. But the Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation is like, what the hell is that? I don't know what that is. And so we're trying to get the word out, let people know, let our fellow Scout Snipers know, but also to kind of reach out and hopefully connect with your average American. If you love our military, if you love your veterans, and you support causes like this is something every American can wrap their head around. Honoring our war dead.
Well, and there's a lot of other ways, right? Like you guys are collecting a history. So getting this in front of Americans who love veterans, maybe they had a family member that served, in a time that, you another name that you might
Yeah,
not know of, you know what I mean? Like you said, fundraising, how else can we help? Like, what all do you need? You need money. Obviously that's
yeah,
the number one thing any nonprofit needs. We've discussed that in other
yeah,
conversations as we're both doing nonprofit work. You
yeah.
need awareness, donations, support. What else do you need?
Yeah, introductions. Because your circle of friends is not my circle of friends. We might know a couple of the same people, but anybody that may be interested in helping in any way, whether you got somebody that might be pretty well connected, or you might be somebody that's a philanthropist, or you know somebody that maybe they have the ability to host an event, and fill it with all the right people. Any of those things, just introductions to people, because until they're talking to us, it's not going to help us.
Right.
Um, we're the ones that are kind of knee deep in the project and can best explain what our goals are and what exactly we need and where the money goes and all that sort of thing. And so the quicker we can get connected with folks who may be interested, the better, so that we can figure out what is a good fit for them to help support. We sell bricks, so the paver bricks.
Yeah.
We're selling those on our website, $500 a pop. You can get yourself a brick that'll be placed at the memorial site. So anybody can buy one, whether it's to honor a fallen brother, whether you want to put a unit and time frame, that you served in. I served in this unit at this time, kind of honor those guys. Or again, just hey, I'm a patriotic American and my family supports you guys, and that's what you put on the brick. I mean, and anything like that is fine. So that's a great way to do it, and have a lasting tribute to your contribution. And then, of course, just hitting the donate button. But really, I almost forgot. Our raffle just started. We, it just went live yesterday. So we got a Vietnam era M40 sniper rifle. And it's all takeoff parts. I don't know if are you familiar with what a takeoff part is?
At one point, I probably would have been, but go ahead and
Well,
explain to those that aren't familiar.
Yeah. So for your audience, a takeoff part in the collecting world, that means that every part of this rifle was once on an actual Marine Corps sniper rifle. So the barrel, the stock, the scope, right? All these things were taken off of an actual M40 Vietnam era sniper rifle from circa 1966. And a lot of these parts are in collectors' hands now, and they're very valuable. The greeny scope, the Redfield 3x9 green anodized scope. I mean, that thing's, you could probably get 10 grand at auction for that thing, just for the scope. The scope mount is original. The only thing that's not original to a 1966 Vietnam era Marine Corps rifle is the receiver, because they cut the receivers or they put them on M48-1s later. So those stayed in service for a long time. But what we do have is an authentic 1966 receiver from the same time frame. It just was not a Marine Corps sniper rifle receiver, but it's been marked with the U.S. roll mark on it, using the same roll mark die that Remington used in the 60s to put the U.S. stamp on it.
That's really cool. That's so cool. I want a ticket now.
Yeah. So go to scoutsniperheritage.org, and you click on the tab that says ways to support or support us, and the first thing in the drop down is the M40 raffle. And then and of course there's the bricks and
is that the best place to go and donate, to get involved with what you've got going on, to get in touch with you guys, is your website?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the website's the place to go, scoutsniperheritage.org. If you go to just scoutsniper.org, that's the Marine Corps Scout Sniper Association, which is the membership organization. But for us, for the history, for the monument, the memorial, scoutsniperheritage.org. we're also on Instagram, X, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's how you found me, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Reach out to Tim. He's a friendly guy, and he'll talk to you and do anything with you. So, Tim, man, so grateful that you wanted to do this today. So excited to help you out and get your mission out there. Hope you had a lot of fun. I could talk about this stuff all day, every day, because it's history and military history in general. And I don't know a lot about the Marine Corps. So it's always cool to get to sit with another, with a Marine and learn about their path forward. And I appreciate you being here to share it. And I'm so grateful to get to give you a platform to get your message out there, brother.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And you're right. You start talking history, and I used to not be nearly as into it as I am these days. But man, I just go down rabbit holes like crazy. It's fun.
It is. It's a time suck, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. And it's important too, because you get to find out where we came from and how things were built and how things are the way that they are. It's really cool process. So man,
well,
I love the work
to remember the sacrifice and honor the legacy. And
yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, I love the work that you're doing, man. Hopefully this helps get the word out for you. I'd love to do this again as we get closer to the release. You're welcome to come back and promote it, talk about updates, update us on, the history and the names and all that good stuff. So keep in touch with us, man. And we'll do this again right before you're ready to maybe even break ground. And then again, before you unveil.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool. Maybe hopefully there'll be an opportunity for everybody, not just Marine Scout Snipers, to go to the unveiling. That would be really awesome. But I understand if there's not. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Mr. Tim Parkhurst from the Marine Scout Sniper Heritage Foundation, trying to spread awareness for the collection of the history and getting the names of the KIAs so that they can memorialize them correctly and get this memorial, underway. So this has been another great live episode of the Strategic Veteran. I thank you so much, Tim, for being here and wanting to do this. And we'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.